Hey, oh boy. Hey, besties, it's Cam from the internet. This is the last installment of the podcast from out of town, and I am patting myself on the back personally for actually keeping up with the podcast even while I was traveling because normally I would have just taken a hiatus, but then I know damn well I would not have come back. So, cheers to keeping the momentum going. I wanted to, as promised last week, talk about what I've started shorthanding to myself as Cam v Corporate or Cam versus Corporate, which is basically just the collection of stories I have in my brain of how I am consistently flabbergasted by corporate America, corporate culture, how I ended up here, because in my spirit, I am like 19 and in my senior year of college, when in fact I am about to be 27 and have been working in my career for 7 years and am like slightly going nuts. Not even maybe in a bad way, just like I feel like the longer you go in your career, the more you feel like perhaps you are going a little bit cuckoo, or maybe that's just me. So I will talk about my background so that you can understand just how deeply unserious my life is. So I went to journalism school. I wanted to be a national political reporter for NPR. That was my like pie in the sky dream. I started journalism school in August of 2016, and we all know what happened in America that November. Despite the fact that a lot of my peers, understandably, decided to deuce out of journalism because of that, and despite the fact that many people told me that perhaps I should not want to be a political reporter, I doubled down on that because A, I'm stubborn, but B, and more importantly, I recognized there was a need for political reporting to continue, and I am the kind of person who refuses to give anyone the privilege of intimidating me. So angry old white men don't scare me. So I did a lot of things in college. One of the things I ended up doing was side hustling as a marketing content writer. And that was for three reasons. Number one, I wanted to make sure that I had some sort of other income coming in that wasn't dependent on how many hours I could get at my part time job. Number two, I had an internship every semester I was in college, and all of those internships, but the very last one, were unpaid. So I needed to subsidize my income somewhat anyway, because I was not making money off of my labor. Side note, I think that unpaid internships are not okay. I think that it's just taking advantage of people who want experience. If you are asking people for labor, you should pay them. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. And number three, I did it because I had been hearing from even my professors that journalism did not pay well. And although I did not know to the extent that I know now just how expensive it could get, I was becoming increasingly more aware that being chronically ill in this country is expensive and you need to pay the bills. So I wanted to have other skills that I could bust out that weren't solely journalism related, in case I ever needed additional income. So all of that to say is that I was prepared and ready when at the end of 2019 I chose to pivot away from journalism. And I did that because I had been laid off from my full-time job as a reporter for a daily newspaper. I was their local government reporter, and I have lots of stories about my days as a local government reporter in northern Mississippi. That was an experience. But I also realized that what I really liked doing was storytelling. I didn't really care about how I did it insofar as journalism or marketing. As long as I wasn't being sleazy, I figured why not go into marketing, because the other reason why I decided to leave journalism is because it did not pay well. My first job out of college, I was making $32,000 a year. And it was only because I was doing executive ghostwriting on the side as like a side hustle that I was like making ends meet every month, because that was not enough to pay to live. And this wasn't in New York or LA or San Francisco. This was the middle of nowhere, Mississippi, and I was not making enough to live. And again, like, I believe journalists should be paid a living wage. I believe everyone should be paid a living wage. And pay inequity is very, very rampant in journalism. And I could rant about that for a whole other episode, and maybe I will one day. But the bottom line is don't wonder why journalism is going away so quickly. It's because, like, no one's pay is keeping up with inflation, but journalism is so bad. And then everyone is like the surprise Pikachu meme when journalism is failing as an industry. Don't wonder why. People literally can't afford to do it. Anyway, I digress. So I ended up in marketing and kind of like climbed the career ladder in a sense of like my first title was editorial assistant, and then I was assistant editor, and then I was senior editor, I was head of content. But a lot of those roles were what we in the biz call fractional, meaning that it was almost like part-time or interim, I guess is the best equivalent, because I actually was self-employed, 100% self-employed, from 2020 to 2024. It started because my side hustle became my full-time thing after I got laid off during the pandemic as part of pandemic-related downsizing. And I just did the side hustle thing full-time while looking for my next full-time role. And then I realized, hey, I'm actually like making a livable amount of money working for myself. I'm just going to keep doing this. Then in 2024, I was staring down the barrel of turning 26. And here in America, when you turn 26, in most cases, you are off your parents' health insurance. And so I needed to find a place that would give me health insurance. And I didn't really feel like paying the almost $675 a month it would have cost me to be like the bare minimum of insured on the open market. So I didn't do that. I went and got a job. And that's the job that I have now. The job that I have now, it's B2B content marketing, so business to business content marketing. I work for a healthcare company, and I'm not going to give a lot of details because I'm not trying to dox myself, but I will say that I know that a lot of people in marketing understandably like make jokes about how their job doesn't really matter, their company like isn't doing anything groundbreaking, and like, this is awesome that I get to say this, but my company actually does do like important work. We serve patients who receive Medicaid benefits. So it's not that my work is meaningless. It's just that working in this environment after working for myself for 4 years has taught me some very hilarious lessons, given me some deeply hilarious insights about all the ways in which, while corporate is the right fit for me at this point in time, I am not built to be a corporate employee. Now, I do want to make this point because I like to be clear and set the record straight. So my company is a startup. So some of the things I'm going to say, if they sound startup-y, they are. I work for a startup. We don't have a huge, corporate employee base. We're not a corporation. Like, I think when people hear corporate, it falls into one of two camps. Either they hear corporate and think, corporate America, suit and tie all the time, 24/7, like your Deloitte's, your, financial professionals, your Allstates, your AAA's, like, like big corporations. And then there's the other camp of people who hear corporate and think the opposite of self-employment. Like, self-employed and corporate are the two genders of working. There's a meme reference that I'm making here. I don't know if it landed. But anyway, so when I say corporate, it's shorthand for the opposite of self-employment. And also because Cam v corporate sounds funny and looks good in writing, and I am in marketing, so I think about these things. So Cam v corporate, there were 3 specific stories that came to mind that I thought were hilarious enough to share with y'all on the podcast. So hopefully it gives you a giggle, especially if you're listening on a Friday morning on your way into work or while working or whatever pertaining to work. And hopefully it will show you that this is really not that serious. So I'm on a marketing team of 2. It's me, and then I report directly to the VP of marketing. What that means is that because we are close enough in age, we're technically in the same... Okay, technically we're not in the same generation. Technically, my manager is Gen Z, So the nice thing about having a manager who is less than 8 years older than you. And the nice thing about working on a team of two, I report directly to the VP of marketing, and we are the entire marketing team, is that you get a lot of leeway to do stuff. This is the story of how I girl bossed really close to the sun and ended up editing an entire book. No, I am not kidding. So, a lot of the people that work at my company are academics, which is actually kind of cool because I love a good academic paper. I actually like reading them. I know, it's weird. I went to grad school, and while I did not go to grad school in any sort of research capacity, I got a creative writing degree with an emphasis on teaching pedagogy, which basically means that I am qualified to teach creative writing or English, like composition classes. So very much theoretical education structures and stuff like that, not like a, heavy, hardcore research background like you typically think of when you go to grad school. But a lot of my colleagues are academics with PhDs or earning their PhDs in some cases, and a lot of them are published authors of academic papers in like well-respected peer-reviewed journals. One of them decided to just casually over the course of a month or so write a book. Like a full-on almost 200-page book when printed and bound, and we'll get to that in a minute. Like a almost 200-page book on various factors around Medicaid. And he just casually emails this to me like middle of the day, one random weekday, like, hey, I wrote this over the course of like a month, like anything we could do with this? And I was just sitting there like, I'm sorry, you just casually drop a manuscript in my lap and then just walk away. Hello, sir. Now, here's the thing about this guy. He's one of our company co-founders, and he is the most humble dude that I have ever interacted with. He is incredibly smart and does not want people to know. Like, he doesn't put on any airs. He's not acting a certain way. He's just there. He's just some guy. He's very gentle and good-hearted and very servant-like in nature. He leads his team very conscientiously and graciously, and so for him, dropping this book in my email and leaving was him being like, don't make a thing out of this, but also like, if you can use this, please go ahead, which I respect because like that's the way that I am with everything that I do. Basically, it's like, well, this isn't a big deal, but if this is helpful, here you go. But this was a whole book. So naturally, I went to my manager, and we have weekly stand-ups, and so I went to him during the next weekly stand-up and was like, so I have this book. I think that we could make this into an industry educational resource for orgs that are in the Medicaid space. And I was sitting there. This was still relatively like early on in my time at this company. I've been there for about a year and a month at this point, and so this was, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, about 3 or 4 months in. And so I'm like not super confident. I'm not trying to make waves or suggest anything that's like going to get me yelled at because I'm terrified of getting fired because then my whole life will fall apart. So I'm like, okay, based on this, I think it might be nice to kind of sort of maybe this could be like an industry conversation starter. This is a resource that those serving patients who receive Medicaid, Medicaid health plans, on and on it goes, like could reference this as a resource. And we have these connections to people that could use this, and maybe we could do a PDF version of it, like a digital download, and on and on and on. And then my boss is like sitting there listening, and then he stops and goes, yeah, okay, that sounds great. Think bigger though, and come up with a project plan. And this is a great opportunity for you to formalize your project management training and go do it and have fun. And I, who had just finished my Google project management certification like 3 weeks prior, was deeply intimidated and stressed. And I was like, oh, okay, so what do I do? So I put together this project charter. And if you've ever seen a project charter, it is like the most detailed, granular document you've ever seen. But luckily for me, being raised by my mother prepared me for this moment because I scheduled everything out to the day of when all these deliverables are going to happen, all this stuff was going to be due. and so on and so forth. Like I was on it. I was like, you know what? Dream big, he says. Okay, so let's have a fully readable website where people can search for keyword terms within this entire book. Let's have linked out subheaders where people can cite their sources accurately, because I hate citing sources in academic papers for web pages if there's not page numbers. So we had auto citation generations, and I was like, let's do a PDF download that we can also include in a newsletter. And you know what? To hell with it. Let's make a physical book that we can send to employees and prospects that our BD team is talking to. Like I went nuts to the wall with this. Give this project plan to my boss, and I'm on pins and needles for like 2 straight days until our next one-to-one. I'm convinced that I'm going to get like roasted, ripped to shreds, not in a mean way, because everyone that I work with genuinely is really, really kind, and I'm really, really lucky. But this is thinking big. I can go pretty big before I go home. And so I was like, maybe I have gone too big. And instead, imagine my shock when my manager goes, "This is great. This is exactly what I'm looking for. Go for it. Let's do it. Tell me what you need for me to make this happen. Tell me what the budget is for the books. When you figure that out, like, let's go." And the Cam was too stunned to speak. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I, from May to December of 2024, my life was run by this book project, and it turned out fantastic. I ended up having to read and edit the contents of the book 3 times due to reasons that were not my fault, but rather the fault of a contractor that our design team brought in. But I now know so much about the things in this book. I edited the book. The person who authored the book actually put me in the acknowledgments, which was very sweet and totally not needed at all, because I'm just happy to be here. But it was a very wild experience, because you have me being given all this like time, money, and leeway to do stuff, and all I keep thinking is like, okay, I don't know how to explain to you guys that this is the same precision with which I have outlined fanfic writing events for fandom. Like the last time I did something this detailed, this in-depth, was when I was running a rare pair ship fic event for my rare pair that ended up becoming canon for the CW's The 100. Like, that was the level of precision I was going. And I was like, this is not how I ever anticipated I would use this life experience. So there's that. The incident that started it all in terms of me thinking about Cam v. Corporate as this ongoing thing was the performance review cycle. One of the lovely, lovely things about having worked for myself for as long as I did is I didn't have to do performance review cycles. Now, there are 2 things to contextualize this story that I need y'all to know. Number 1 is that I am clinically diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. And it's bordering on severe. So there's that. Number 2 is that I am petrified of losing my job. Like, it's not like if I think about losing my job for too long, my Oura ring will go off because my heart rate is spiking. Like I live in fear of losing my job. So in my head, when I hear performance review, my brain goes to, they're going to get rid of me. It doesn't matter if I had the best year on the planet, I'm still going to think that. So my company announced a performance review cycle was going to start in December, right before we all broke until the new year. And so I could tell that the culture was very much about using performance reviews as benchmarks, not as like, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired, you're staying, you're fired for staying. Like, it wasn't about like getting rid of people. It was like a benchmarking toward, okay, how do we all like grow together? And I could tell that because that was the way that it was verbally delivered during like an all company meeting. I, however, spent from middle of December when it was announced, all the way through the holidays, all the way through the holiday break, then all the way until the beginning of February, just like literally every other night, stress streams about performance reviews. It was in hell. But the funny thing, this is the funny part, this is the Cam v. Corporate hilarity part of it, is that we were given the, self-evaluation questions that we needed to fill out and submit. And when I tell you that I was absolutely intense about it to a like very hilarious degree. I knew that I had these questions to answer, and I also knew that for whatever reason, like I have never quite interpreted things the way that other people interpret things, and I don't know. My friends have opinions about why that is, and I don't know if they're true. It's none of my business if they're true. But basically, like I will read something like I think one of it was, one of the questions was, please share what you feel are your most meaningful contributions to your team for the 2024 performance review cycle. And I was like, I know what mine are, but what I really need to be thinking is what my boss's opinions are of my most meaningful contributions, because it doesn't matter what I think, because if I say what I think and it's different than what he thinks, I'm going to get fired. And over and over and over again, my brain would go off on all this. And so my friends trying to help me were like, okay, Cam, like you are freaking out to the point that you are actually making yourself sick. Like I actually gave myself an ulcer at one point. You need to chill. We're going to help. And so we pulled up, like, one of my friends opened Microsoft Paint on their desktop, screen shared into Discord, because we were all in a Discord call, and we proceeded to draw like out a plan of how I was going to discuss these answers to these questions. And the thing about Discord calls is that they are not serious. I don't know what happens to people when they enter a Discord call, and this is a delightful thing, make no mistake. You enter a Discord call and your sanity flies out the window. You take leave of your senses. You are there to be feral and unhinged, and that is a beautiful thing. However, this also meant that every time thereafter, I would start giggling hysterically if I was working on my performance review, like actually submitting my self-evaluation, because I was just remembering the buck wild shenanigans that were happening in the chat while we were just trying to stop Cam's mental health spiral over performance reviews. Let that be a lesson to ye. If you feel like you are too neurodivergent to be in corporate America, get all of your neurodivergent besties in a room together to help you fill out a performance review, and you won't feel like you have suddenly become neurotypical. You will, however, feel justified in living your life the way you do because, well, these other people do it, and we all are like adults with jobs, so clearly it's not that bad. Then what makes this even funnier is that in the questions, nowhere did it say that there was a word count limit, and yet there was a word count limit. So we like scripted out the answers to the 3 self-evaluation questions, and then I went into the actual form to like input, like, copy and paste those answers, and it's like, oh yeah, your max like word count is 500 words, and I had, I think, like 700 words, 600 words, and like 550 words, and like and to be clear, like these words included receipts. Like if I'm gonna come to the table about what I think I do well and what I think I don't do as well and would like to get better, I'm gonna come correct. I had percentages, I had metrics, I had KPIs, I had the whole shebang. Because if there's one thing about me, is that if I'm presented with a challenge, if I'm presented with the, like, okay, here is the corporate America game you must play to survive, I will play that game to the best of my ability. And if there is a way to win, I will win at any cost. Is this healthy? No. Is this what I was doing? Yes. Because again, petrified to an unhealthy degree of losing my job. So I get into the portal and it's like a random Wednesday, and middle of the day, mind you, the time's important, middle of the day. And so I go to like enter this stuff in. I have to shorten this this text. And normally I'm pretty good at truncating things, but this was just like this was my final straw. This was my 13th reason. I did not want to think about this anymore. I was experiencing acid reflux as I texted the group chat, gang, I'm having acid reflux. I have to shorten this to 500 words. Help. And one of my other friends used the Discord server at everyone function, pinged everyone, and then we had the neurodivergency brain trust and the one friend who is neurotypical all in the chat being like, okay, here's what you do. And we ended up just rewriting 2 of the 3 answers and getting it all together, and me submitting it with just a few minutes left before like the answers were due. And again, like, this is hilarious to me because of the mental image of like all of these neurodivergent baddies in a Discord chat taking this incredibly seriously for a platform that is not meant to have this level of levity. And to close this story, I will say that I did get a meets expectations on my performance review. I did get a merit increase and a cost of living increase, and I'm not like in danger of getting fired. So like it was fine. Will this stop me from being anxious? next year, or I guess this year, 2025, when it's time to do this again. No, it won't, but at least I know what's coming for me. So there's that. The final Cam v corporate story I'll share is more about Cam realizes she's too neurodivergent for this, but also just weird enough for it to work. So I have never been more painfully aware of how neurodivergent I am than when I'm on a company trip. My company is fully remote, 100% remote. People that I work with live as near to where I live in California as San Francisco and as far from me as Maine, Boston. You get the drift. Ironically, one of the three places that my company is like operating in is in the state of Virginia, which is where I used to live. And if you listen to the last episode, I might be moving back to. And so that was very funny to me that that's such a small world because you don't typically think of Virginia. But anyway, I digress. So we do quarterly offsites with my company, quarterly team offsites. So it's just my team, which is like 7 or 8 people, and we all get together in a place of our choosing, and we spend 2 full working days, with an agenda of things that we want to work on and discuss together, that it's not productive or ideal to do it over Zoom. So like, for instance, it's really hard to do like a content brainstorm over Zoom. And so that was a session that I led, just like giving a random example. It's not random, it's true, but just an example. So, however, these offsites also include team dinners and at least one like activity for fun. And that is all very well and good and lovely. And I want to make it clear, I lucked out supremely with this job because not only is the mission of the company great, the company is run by very smart people with an interest in making a sustainable company that functions long term. But the people that I work with closely, like my team, are genuinely very wonderful human beings. And you don't find that very often. And I love that. However, they are all so normal. They are so normal. And I am so not. Like, the closest thing that I have in common with a couple of my colleagues is that we're both Christians, and that's it. Like, they're all so normal. And I don't say that in a bad way. Like, I really don't. Like, I think that there is something so nice about being societally normal. I could never be, but I don't shade anyone who is. We all like what we like. We are who we are. I am just really, really freaking neurodivergent in all of the wrong ways for a company offsite. Case in point, we are sitting in the conference room of a WeWork in Chicago for 7.5 straight hours. Normally, when I'm in my house, I can get up, walk around, stretch, pop my hip, pop my joints, get some water, stand outside and look at some grass anytime I want, unless I'm in a meeting. Can't do that in a conference room with 6 or 7 other people. Can't distract yourself or multitask or fidget with something. You can't do any of that. And it's just like, well, this is fun as long as I'm not thinking about how not fun it is to go against every fiber of my being in these moments. And also, wow, I miss my cats. But also, I am not good at making small talk, and there's a lot of small talk required. This all gets even more hilarious when you realize that these people do know that I gave a TED Talk. And they also know what it was about. So if you are new or don't know, I did give a TED Talk in September. I gave a TED Talk about fandom and loneliness and how people who love sports fandom for abolishing the male loneliness epidemic, but hate entertainment fandom and rip on it all the time because it's just like dumb teenage girls who are obsessed with boy bands, need to shut up because they serve the same purpose, and just say that you don't like women in marginalized communities because we are who hangs out in fandom and you are okay with sports fandom because it's men. And that's sort of the thing. So I gave the TED Talk in September. It hasn't been posted on the internet as of when I'm recording this, which is April 2nd. And they're holding it because they want to like release it as an editor's pick, which is really cool and flattering, especially given that I was standing on the TED stage wearing a graphic t-shirt that says I'm a very interesting person online. But it does also mean that whenever it hits the internet and my colleagues see it, they're going to realize that I am very weird. They're also going to hear me cop to on the TED stage writing fan fiction for fun at the age of, at the time, 26. None of this is a bad thing. It's just really funny because people know what the TED Talk was about. They just haven't seen the talk itself, but they know what it's about. And that is seen as like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. Like, that's really interesting. Good for you. And it's like, okay, so when I talk about it, like, you genuinely dig it. You're down with it. But in practice, I'm too weird for this. Like, Cam v. Corporate is winning in every offsite ever. It's pulverizing me because I cannot cosplay a neurotypical normal person to save my freaking life. I don't know what it is. I just don't have it in me to be that way. But please enjoy the notion of me presenting at some point my TED Talk to my coworkers and them just being like, well, yep, that tracks. And I have zero regrets about that. And yes, whenever the TED Talk comes out, the internet will be the first to know. So I hope you enjoyed some anecdotes from Cam versus Corporate, because this is just a snapshot of how I girl boss Too Close to the Sun on a regular basis. And in a future episode, maybe I will tell you the story of how I basically got off and done with, wrapped up the book project, and then immediately threw myself at another project of my own making. Hell is empty and the devils are in the Asana task board. But I digress. Before I sign off, because we are already past my 30-minute mark that I try to stick to. Before I sign off, I do want to say, like, as of this recording, TikTok is going to be banned on the 5th. Obviously, if you're listening to this, you will know the fate of TikTok because this is coming out on the 11th. But what I will say is, regardless of where you're listening to this or what happened to TikTok, I do hope that you continue to hang out with me on my other spaces online. I know that I say this every time, but you can find my Substack linked in the description of whatever you view this or listen to this on. But I would also encourage you, if you want to, please leave a comment. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're watching this, I know Spotify has like a comment feature now, I think. But feel free to leave a comment. Like, I am well aware that me doing a podcast is wildly different from me being on TikTok, because on TikTok, where I think a lot of the listeners here know me from, you can comment back to me at literally any time you want, and I can talk back to you, and that's the fun. And it's really weird to do these podcasts for me because no one can talk back to me, and I am at my best and most chaotic when I'm riffing off of other people. So all of that to say, if you want to leave a comment, please feel free. Please feel free on YouTube, show up on Spotify, you can comment on my Substack, and I will read it and respond anyway. I'm trying to figure out if there's a way to like post this to Substack without making Substack my podcast host, and that's just like, I'll have to figure that out. But yeah, I want you to talk back to me, so please feel free to talk back, because that is half the fun of doing this. But thank you for listening to my diatribes on Cam v. Corporate. If you have your own hilarious corporate related stories, please do share. I might just like share clips of this anyway, just even though it's just the audio on TikTok, because I'm dying to hear people's V corporate stories. I cannot be the only one. So feel free to share. Thank you for listening. I look forward to showing you my face. The next episode comes out the day after my birthday. I was born April 17, and the episode will come out on April 18th, and I will be back in my home. And if you want, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is linked in the description, because I will try, for the viewers at home, to corral my beautiful daughter Dulcie, who you may know as the cat who had surgery on her knee, so that you can see her and her adorable face and congratulate her on surviving over a month in baby jail. At that point, it will have been a little over a month. Until then, be good to yourselves, be good to others. Remember my foibles the next time you feel some type of way about working your corporate job, and I will see you next week. Bye!